Let's talk about some of my all-time favorite chiclet. Hello everybody, if you're new here, I read a lot of contemporary and a lot of chick literature, women's fiction, whatever you want to call it. It's one of my favorite genres. It's my guilty pleasure genre. It's the genre I turn to if I finished a very heavy fantasy or thriller, or I just need a pick-me-up. I turn to contemporary or chick lit. That's just like my go-to. So because of that, I have a lot of them I've read. I've had some I haven't liked, but I have some that I have loved. So today I'm sharing with you all of my favorite chick lit books. Now, I've done a few videos of these in the past. I will link them down below. I'm gonna try to keep them relatively fresh, so try not to repeat too many, but there will be some repeats in this. So yeah, there's a lot I have to talk about today, so let's just get right to it. I talk about chick lit, I mean adult women's fiction pretty much. Contemporary, I classify more as YA contemporary. Chick lit, I classify more as adult chick lit. Just so you're aware, all of the books I'm showing today are within the adult genre. So my first foray into chick lit was really with one particular author, and she's still one of my favorite chick lit authors, and that is Sophie Kinsella. You guys know how much I love her books, and more particularly, I love her audiobooks. She is the one author I will always make sure I listen to her book. I don't do that with a ton of authors, but with Sophie Kinsella, I do so. My favorite of hers still stands to this day as I've Got Your Number. This is about a woman who is engaged and she loses her engagement ring and it makes her meet this other man, and a lot of funny things happen. This book is full of humor, full of romance and cutesy mishaps, and I love it. The audiobook is amazing. My other favorite by her is My Not So Perfect Life. It is about a woman in advertising who loses her job, and she decides to help her dad open this glamping business, so she does that, and of course there's a lot of funny mishaps and romance as well. I would say if you're looking for a great audiobook recommendation for chick lit and you want to laugh out loud, Sophie Kinsella is the way to go. Next up, another one of my favorite chick lit authors is Christina Lauren. Christina Lauren is comprised of two authors, Christina and Lauren, hence why they're called Christina Lauren, and they have written a ton of chick lits. I would say in the past couple years they have really delved into the chick lit genre. Before then I think they were kind of primarily like sexy time books, and they do have those in their books, but they have kind of strayed away from that and are mostly kind of chick lit books with a lot of humor, with a lot of romance and some steamy time as well, which I kind of like that change, honestly. And they have written a lot of chick lit books. I want to say like 6 maybe, and there are 3 of theirs that I absolutely love. I've given all of these, I'm going to show you, 5 stars. I adored them. First up is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating. This is about 2 friends that kind of set up each other on multiple dates, but they always end up being with each other. It's cute, it's quirky, 5 stars. I loved it. If you want a great, just lovey-dovey romantic book, look no further. Then on the other end of the scale, we have Love and Other Words. This one is a much more grander, epic scale of a love story. This one is told in alternating timelines as well. We go into the past where we have this character and she falls in love with a boy and they have this epic love story, and then something tragic happens and it forces them apart, and now years later she is moving on with her life, and then who does she run into but said boy, and it stirs up a lot of feelings for her and a lot of things. So it's an epic love story, and it's also a second chance romance. And I would say this one's the most serious book they've ever written because it is romantic, but it's got, you know, a lot of depth to it when it comes to the romance. It's not just, hey, cutesy romance. It's much more deeper and a lot of pain involved in it as well. I loved it so very much. And then the last one I love of theirs is actually their most recent release, which came out this month, and that is The Unhoneymooners. This is about 2 people who go on a honeymoon because the people that were supposed to go on the honeymoon are sick. So it's about pretty much the maid of honor and the best man who kind of hate each other, and they have to pretend to be in love to go on this honeymoon, and then they find themselves maybe having feelings for each other. If you want a great vacation romance, hate to love romance, this is so good. I loved it. I laughed out loud several times. I swooned a lot. I loved it. So all of these I gave 5 stars, and these are my favorite Christina Lauren books because you hear a lot about them, and those are just my 3 favorite, and these are the 3 that I would recommend. 2 of them very, very cutesy and lovey-dovey. Then you have one that's a little bit more epic and kind of deeper and a little bit more sad, but still full of love. Moving on to an author that has also switched genres, in my opinion personally, and that is Taylor Jenkins Reid. Taylor Jenkins Reid started out with, I would say, writing predominantly women's fiction, especially with her first 4 books, I want to say. They were all women's fiction, and then her last 2 ones, she's changed kind of genre, I would say, more into the literary fiction historical genre, which I actually prefer more, but I still love some of her Chiclet books. Like they're candy to me. I can't get enough of them. I would say my favorite of hers as far as goes to Chiclet, it would be Maybe Another Life. This is about a woman who you follow 2 alternating timelines, or not even that. It's like 2 decisions, like what her life would have been if she would have went home with this guy from a bar versus what her life would have been if she hadn't gone home. It's very interesting. I loved it, full of romance, full of just kind of mystery because you don't know which life she really chose based on that one decision. I loved it a ton. Then we also have After I Do. This one's a little bit more serious. It's about a couple that's been married for 10 years. Then they decide that they don't love each other anymore and they decide to take a break. And it's about their year apart and how they learn to grow to be by themselves. They do really love one another, and if they want to get back together, I love this one to pieces. I listened to this one on audio as well and loved it. I would say actually Taylor Jenkins Reid also has some amazing audiobooks. Would recommend all of them audio. And then my last, I would say this is probably my least favorite of her Chiclet, would be One True Love. This is about a woman who is married and her husband gets lost in a plane crash pretty much, and so she's devastated. Years later she moves on, she moves home, she gets engaged again, and then she gets a call that her husband is actually not dead, that he is alive and he's on his way home. So this is a kind of love triangle book, if you will, because she's newly engaged but she's still married, and who does she choose? Who is she now after all these events happen to her in her life? So Taylor Jenkins Reid early stuff is mostly women's fiction, Chiclet. These are my favorite. I would say actually probably these 2 are my favorite. I would recommend After I Do and Maybe Another Life any day. I love them both, would highly recommend them. And the last author I want to talk about that has written multiple books before I get into the single books is Helen Hoang. Helen Hoang writes the best probably steamy time books that are full of romance that I love. So first up we have The Kiss Quotient. This is all about a character named Stella who is autistic, and she does not feel comfortable in the sexual department, so she decides to hire a male escort to teach her her ways, and of course love happens. And then The Bride Test is her most recent release, which came out this month, and it follows a character that was in The Kiss Quotient, so it's going to be a companion series. And basically we follow a character named Kai, and he is also autistic as well, and his mom decides to bring him home a bride from Vietnam, and it's basically about him trying to figure out if he really wants this woman or if he doesn't, and what should he do. Either way, both of them full of love. Both of them have great autistic rep, which I highly appreciate, and both of them have great steamy time. So highly recommend Helen Hoang books for sure. Moving on to some single books by authors I've written that I just love one particular book, or I've only read one of their particular books. The first one up being Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey Miss Quinton. This book also comes out this month. Do not sleep on this book. I know it's getting a ton of hype. It is well worth it because it is so swoon-worthy, so romantic, so funny. I loved it. This one follows Alex, who is the son of a female president, and he kind of is in a feud with the royal prince of England named Henry. Basically a mishap happens and they have to pretend to be best friends for media sakes, and then they become friends, and then they become more. So this book is full of many tropes. You have the hate to love trope because these characters hated each other at first, then they become friends, so it's the friends to lovers tropes. Then they get into a relationship, then it's the secret relationship because they have to hide the relationships because of what the world perceives them as. And I love this book so freaking much. It's such a swoon-worthy book. It's so romantic. The writing is beautiful because it's so quirky and witty and smart. I loved it. Highly recommended. Well worth all the stars. Next up, we have Intercepted by Alexa Martin. This is another series that kind of is like The Kiss Quotient, where we have a companion novel. This one also is a sports romance, so in case sports are your thing, please look out for this series. This one follows a girl named Marley who's in a relationship with a player in the NFL, and then she finds out that he may have been cheating on her, so she breaks up with him, obviously. And then a new player comes on the team that she's actually known from her past, so they kind of get together and it's all about that. I would say this is a steamy time book full of sports, and I really enjoyed it. Then we have The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker, an underrated gem of a romance book. No one talks about this book a lot, but I loved it to pieces. It's all about a girl that goes to Alaska because her father is dying. Her dad has like a charter plane company, and she also meets a new guy, and he's very rugged, very kind of mean, kind of the hate to love trope again as well. And she's very materialistic starting out this book, but she learns to kind of overcome that. The romance is amazing because it's got the good hate to love and the kind of rugged pilot guy, and all while set in the Alaska wilderness. Like, I love this book so freaking much. Would not hate a sequel by any means. Of course, we have the very popular, the very beloved The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. A lot of people love this book, including myself. This has got Probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, hate to love trope book of all time. I just loved it. We follow Lucy and Josh, who are kind of co-receptionists to co-CEOs for a publishing company, and it turns out they are gonna both apply for the same job, so they're kind of, you know, both going for it, and then they have a hate to love romance, and it is freaking stunning and steamy and beautiful, and I want more from this world. I want more of these characters. I loved it so much. I know you probably hear it a ton. I can't help but say I love this book because I truly loved it. An oldie but a goodie is Attachments by Rainbow Rowell. I love Attachments. A funny, witty book by Rainbow Rowell that I think gets overlooked a lot because Rainbow Rowell is known a lot for her YA books, but I like her adult books just as much, honestly. And this is about a guy who is working at a company, and his job's like to flag emails, pretty much. Like, if a word's used, he kind of flags it and tells them, like, you know, hey, don't use this language at work, or don't say this at work. And he pretty much follows these two women that have an email chain. They talk back and forth, and he never flags them or never gets them in trouble because he becomes kind of, you know, enamored with one of them, and he's like, I think I love her. And basically it's all about that. I know that sounds kind of creepy, and it is creepy at first, but it's not like You by Carolyn Kepnes by any means, so just rest assured with that. I loved it. I thought it was cute, adorable. I love the techie side of it. I love the kind of email stalking, but not really. It was just really adorable, and this one I think gets overlooked a lot, but I don't think it should be overlooked. I think you should definitely check it out. We have Good Luck Charm by Helena Hunting. Again, another sports romance. If you want hockey side of things, check this one out. This is about a woman named Lila who was in love with her high school boyfriend Ethan, and they were going to be together forever, and then he gets drafted by the National Hockey League, and he decides to break up with her and leave her high and dry. So he comes home because he's recruited by their home state to be on their team. I don't know how drafts work. Just imagine it. And he wants to get back together with Lila, and she's like, you broke my heart. And basically, long story short, this is a second chance romance book with a ton of steaminess in it. I really enjoyed it. It's not one of my favorite chick lit books, but I still enjoyed it, and I would recommend it if you love the genre more particularly. I think my fault is I enjoy sports romance books, but I never fully love them. But I know a ton of people out there do, so that's why I wanted to recommend it. It's a solid chick lit, just not one of my favorites. The last book I want to talk about is One Day in December by Josie Silver. Don't let the cover fool you if you're like, this is a straight up Christmas romance. It kind of is. It was released around Christmas, and it has a Christmas theme, but I feel like you can read this any time of the year, honestly. Just because it has December in it doesn't mean it's only for December only. This is about two characters that have the most epic meet cute of all time. A girl that's on a London bus, and she sees a guy at a bus stop, and they lock eyes, and it's like fate. And then what do you know, the bus pulls away and she never learns his name. A year passes by and her roommate is throwing a party, and then her roommate's like, hey, I want you to meet my boyfriend. And it turns out the boyfriend is the bus guy. So they keep quiet, and then over a span of 10 years, I think this book takes place, you see the relationship that they have of friendships, of something more, of just them struggling with it. I love this book. This could be a great movie. I don't think that a lot with chick lit books, but this one I could fully see into a great chick lit movie if they do it right. I loved it. It's kind of your epic, grand love story of like start of ill-fated love and star-crossed lovers, and we could have had it all if the timing was right. I enjoyed it, would recommend it. Don't be fooled by the cover and the name. It's not a super Christmassy book. It goes throughout 10 years. It's not just 10 years of Christmases. There's a lot of other time that happens in this book. So there you have it. Those are my favorite chick lit books that I love and adore. A lot of these books I have reread because I just love them so much. And I don't reread a ton of books, but I reread chick lit books because they just give me a sense of warmth and happiness, and I just love them. So I read a ton of them. I'm going to read more, so I'm sure I'll do an updated version of this in a couple years, maybe in a year, who knows. But I would love to hear some of your favorite chick lits. Did I mention some of yours? Do you have any ones that you would recommend to me? Please let me know, because I am always on the lookout for the next best chick lit, because your girl loves the genre. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.